Although shelters make every effort to assist as many dogs as they can, there are limitations. Unfortunately, this sorrowful dog clung onto his beloved toy while anticipating his imminent euthanasia. Join us to uncover what transpired next. Dogs often become cherished members of a family, and most animal enthusiasts firmly believe that when you adopt a pet, it's for a lifetime. You should not simply obtain an animal for as long as it's convenient and then discard it. Your pets are under your care, but occasionally circumstances may not unfold as anticipated. There are factors outside of your jurisdiction that could affect not only your entire household, but also your animal companion. As a young puppy, Smokey was adopted by his owner and provided with ample space in the backyard to frolic and numerous stuffed animals to chase and enjoy. Among his playthings, a small gray elephant with pink ears held a special place in his heart. He took this elephant toy with him everywhere he went. When they got ready for a walk, he would pick up the toy and take it with him. He slept with it by his side, and surprisingly for such a large dog, he was really gentle with the toy. He could have destroyed it within seconds, but he kept it in one piece ever since he was a puppy. He had a great home with a lot of love. But when he was 5 years old, everything changed. His owner lost his job and they started to struggle. They made sure that Smokey always had food, but they had to move into a small apartment. It was getting harder to look after him. His family loved him, but they were worried about him, so they started to look for another home for him, but no one they knew could take in such a large dog. They couldn't find a job, and finally they found out that they were going to lose their home. They tried everything to get someone to look after Smokey, but finally on Valentine's Day, they had to face the truth. They couldn't care for Smokey anymore, and they couldn't find anyone else to take him in. They took him to a shelter and they surrendered him, but they made sure to leave him with his favorite stuffed elephant to bring him comfort. It was a heartbreaking decision for his person, but it was also heartbreaking for the dog. He didn't know what he did wrong, and he missed his family for 5 years. He was used to living in a home with constant attention, but now he was in a small enclosure with only his favorite toy to keep him company. The shelter volunteers tried to give the sad dog as much attention as he needed, but Smokey had severe anxiety because of all the changes that were happening in his life. He was very shy, he didn't want to play, and his only comfort was his toy. He kept it in his mouth at all times while he just lay there in a corner. The shelter that he was surrendered to had a big shortage of housing for animals, and they needed to get the animals in their care adopted as quickly as possible. They didn't have the space or the funds to keep animals for the long term. They needed to get Smokey and his elephant a good home as quickly as possible. They put him up for adoption almost as soon as he came to the shelter. He's a good-looking dog and looked so sweet with his stuffed toy permanently hanging out of his mouth. Even if he was shy, the shelter didn't think that they would have a hard time placing him with a new family. He was used to having a family and living in a home. This should be easy, right? Unfortunately not. As soon as Smokey went up for adoption, people started coming to look at the dog and see if they connected. There were a few families that came to visit Smokey as photos with the teddy that the shelter posted drew attention, and people wanted to meet the cute dog. The problem was that his anxiety was creating a bigger issue. Each time a prospective adoptive family came to visit, he would try to hide in a corner, and if they approached him, he would get so scared that he would start growling at them. The theory was that he might have been frightened that they wanted to take his toy, but it didn't matter. Each time he growled at a family, it assured a negative outcome. No one was going to adopt a dog that they were scared of. Most families weren't equipped to handle a dog that had that much anxiety, but it put the shelter in a very difficult position because he was showing signs of aggression. They had to take him off the list of dogs that were eligible for adoption, but that also meant that they were basically signing his death warrant. They couldn't keep a dog that they couldn't get adopted. They had to set a date or deadline when they would euthanize poor Smokey. He was just clutching his favorite toy while on death row, just waiting to be put down. But that didn't mean that the shelter was just giving up on Smokey. They wanted to give him another chance. They were actively looking for other shelters to help him find a foster family that could take the sad dog. One where the people had experience with a dog in his situation, where they could give him the best chance that he could have. They believed that he would do much better in a home than he was doing in the shelter surrounded by many other dogs. The environment was adding to his stress, and that caused the aggression. If they could get him into a more peaceful environment, they might be able to offer him for adoption again. He didn't have a lot of time left when the people from I Have a Dream rescue organization heard about Smokey, and they offered to help out. They had a little bit more resources and foster parents that weren't afraid to take on a dog that needed more patience and care. They reached out to their foster families and made sure that they understood that they wouldn't just be fostering a dog, but they would also be fostering a very important stuffed elephant too. He was a package deal, and luckily, they could get a family that was very happy to take Smokey and his elephant despite all of the behavioral problems that he was showing. One of the founders of the organization, Misty Martin Fuller, explained that they had every intention of making sure that Smokey had a place to stay. Despite any drawbacks that he could have, they would never give him a deadline. They hoped that they could give him a forever home, but even if he had to be in foster care forever, they would care for him. They decided to tell the dog that he was coming home with them, and he reacted with a happy smile. The first time since he went to the shelter, there was hope that the dog would be able to be rehabilitated and mixed back into a family life one day, soon after he moved to his foster family. It wasn't just smooth, but what happened was unbelievable. He quickly went from the sad dog lying in one corner of his enclosure with his stuffed animal as company to a happy dog that started to become excited about life again. His entire attitude changed. The stress from being in a strange environment was gone. He got to relax and adapt to the fact that he was separated from his people and had to move on. Soon he started playing with his foster family. He even put his elephant down and played with other toys. It was still his favorite, and he wanted it there when he went to bed, but he didn't carry it around constantly as a comfort. But much sooner than they expected, the organization decided that he was ready to be put back up for adoption. But first they wanted to give his own family a chance to get him back. Although they had a deep affection for Smokey, circumstances prevented them from being able to continue caring for him. They were grateful for his rescue, but knew it was time for him to move on. Smokey's story and photos on social media had made him immensely popular and brought attention to other shelter dogs in need. As a result, there were many families eager to provide him with a new home. With his favorite stuffed elephant by his side, Smokey was soon on his way to a new life and was once again full of joy and energy, much like when he was a young pup. Smokey's story exemplified the transformative power of love. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with your loved ones. Thank you.